We're back together again with psychological depth. Today's episode will dive into the topic, how to have easy relationships with women. There's this idea floating around that relationships are supposed to be hard, that love means struggle, that if you're not fighting for it, working at it, bleeding for it, then maybe it's not real. You hear it everywhere. Relationships take work. Love is a choice you make every day. The best things in life don't come easy, and men internalize this. They think the exhaustion is normal. They think the constant negotiation, the walking on eggshells, the emotional labor that never ends, that's just what relationships are. I'm here to tell you something different, something that might rewire how you think about all of this. Easy relationships exist. They're not a myth. They're not reserved for lucky people or perfect people. They're the natural result of specific conditions being met. And today, I'm going to explain exactly what those conditions are, why most men never experience them, and how you can set yourself up for the kind of relationship where things just work. Let me start with a statement that's going to trigger some people. If your relationship feels like constant work, that's not a sign of depth. That's a sign of misalignment. I know you've been told the opposite your whole life. You've been told that the struggle is noble, that fighting through difficulty is what separates real love from shallow attraction. But think about it logically for a second. When you have a best friend, someone you genuinely connect with, do you have to work hard at that friendship? Do you have to constantly negotiate, manage their emotions, prove your value, wonder if they're going to leave? No, it just flows. You enjoy each other's company. You want to spend time together. There's ease. Now, why would romantic relationships be fundamentally different? Why would the addition of romance suddenly require everything to become difficult? The answer is, it shouldn't. When a romantic relationship is genuinely aligned, when both people are where they want to be, it has that same ease. The difficulty you're experiencing isn't a feature of love. It's a symptom of something being off. Either the selection was wrong, or the value equation is imbalanced, or the incentives aren't aligned. Something is broken, and no amount of working on it will fix a structural problem. Let me introduce a concept that'll clarify everything. It's called incentive alignment. When two people in a relationship both feel like staying is the best option available to them, cooperation happens naturally. Nobody has to be convinced, nobody has to be managed, nobody has to be guilted or pressured or negotiated with. Both people just behave well, because behaving well serves their interests. Think about it like a business partnership. When two companies are in a deal that benefits both of them, they don't need lawyers in the room every day. They don't need constant oversight. They just do what they're supposed to do because it's in their interest to do so. The relationship runs smoothly because the incentives are aligned. Now imagine a partnership where one company feels like it's getting a bad deal. Suddenly, everything becomes difficult. Resistance appears. Trust erodes. Every interaction becomes a negotiation. Your relationship works the same way. When she feels like she's in a good deal, when she looks at you and thinks, "This is better than my alternatives," she's motivated to maintain it. She's cooperative. She's pleasant. She's invested. But when she feels like she could do better, everything changes. She becomes difficult, critical, withholding. Not because she's evil, but because her behavior reflects her internal assessment. And her internal assessment is, "I'm not sure this is worth it." Here's the uncomfortable truth nobody tells you. Relationship dynamics are driven less by love and more by comparative evaluation. She's not comparing you to some abstract ideal of the perfect man. She's comparing you to her realistic alternatives, the other men who might be available to her, the life she might have if she were single, the options she perceives, real or imagined. When you stack up favorably against those alternatives, she treats you well. When you don't, she doesn't. It's that simple and that brutal. I know this sounds unromantic. I know you want to believe that love transcends these calculations.
But watch behavior, not words.
The woman who believes she's with someone rare and valuable behaves completely differently than the woman who believes she's settling. Same woman, different perception, completely different behavior. Let me give you a framework. Think of relationships like job offers. When someone gets a job offer that's clearly better than their current situation, higher salary, better culture, more growth potential, they're excited. They show up early. They work hard. They don't complain about small inconveniences. They want to keep the job because they know how good they have it. Now, imagine someone stuck in a job they feel is beneath them, a job they took because they had no other options. They're resentful. They do the minimum. They're constantly looking for something better. They make everything difficult. Women evaluate relationships the same way men evaluate jobs. They're assessing upside, downside, stability, status, and alternatives. They're calculating whether this arrangement serves their interests, and their behavior flows directly from that calculation. A woman who feels she landed a great opportunity, a man who exceeds her alternatives, behaves like an employee who loves their job. A woman who feels she's stuck in a bad deal behaves like an employee counting down to their resignation. So how do you become the great opportunity? How do you position yourself so that she looks at you and thinks, I need to protect this? It comes down to one variable: relative perceived value. How valuable are you compared to her realistic alternatives, not compared to some fantasy, not compared to celebrities or billionaires, compared to the actual men she could realistically attract and keep? And here's the key insight. Effort in relationships is inversely proportional to how replaceable you seem. The less easily substituted you seem, the smoother everything becomes. When you're rare, when what you offer is genuinely hard to find elsewhere, she works to keep you. When you're common, when she believes she could find someone like you easily, you work to keep her. It's a seesaw, and most men are on the wrong end. Let me tell you something that sounds dark, but is actually hopeful. A woman who has experienced bad relationships is often easier to be with than a woman who hasn't. Why? Because she has contrast. She knows what's out there. She's been with the guy who cheated. She's been with the guy who couldn't hold a job. She's been with the guy who made her feel worthless. And when she finds someone decent, someone stable, someone kind, someone who actually shows up, she recognizes the rarity. She's not taking it for granted because she's tasted the alternative. She protects the relationship because she knows how bad it can get. She's appreciative because appreciation comes from contrast. Meanwhile, a woman who has been sheltered, who has only dated reasonably good men, who has never experienced the bottom of the barrel, she might not recognize what she has. She might think decent treatment is the baseline. She might believe she could find you anywhere. This is why some men have an easier time with certain women than others. It's not just about his value, it's about her reference point. A man who is a 7 looks like a 10 to a woman whose previous men were 4s. The same man looks like a 6 to a woman whose previous men were 8s. His actual value didn't change, her perception changed, and perception drives everything. Here's a principle that will save you years of confusion. High investment from her is a reaction, not a request. You cannot ask a woman to be more loving, more affectionate, more patient, more cooperative. You cannot negotiate desire. You cannot convince someone to treat you well. These behaviors emerge automatically, naturally, when she feels like she's in a good situation, when she believes staying with you is the smart move. Think about it. Have you ever had to convince a woman to text you back when she was really into you? Have you ever had to ask her to be excited to see you? Have you ever had to negotiate for affection in the early stages when she was genuinely attracted? No, it just happened. She wanted to reach out. She wanted to see you. She wanted to be close. Because in that moment, her internal calculation said, "This is good, don't lose this." All the behaviors you're trying to extract from her through communication, through negotiation, through couples therapy, they're symptoms, not inputs. You can't install them directly. You can only create conditions where they emerge naturally. And those conditions are, she believes you're rare, she believes her alternatives are worse, and she believes losing you would be a downgrade. When those three things are true, you don't have to ask for anything. It just flows. Now, let me address the flip side. When a 1 is being difficult, cold, inconsistent, demanding, emotionally volatile, what does that signal? It's not a communication problem. It's not that she needs you to listen better or validate more. It's a comparison problem. She's dissatisfied because, consciously or not, she believes she could do better. Her behavior is leaking her internal assessment. I know this is painful to hear. You want to believe that if you just found the right words, if you just understood her love language, if you just tried a little harder, things would improve. But trying harder is often the worst thing you can do. Because here's what happens when you overinvest in response to her pulling away. You confirm her suspicion that you're the one who needs her more. You signal that you're willing to work for what she's reluctant to give. You flip the dynamic even further in her direction. Chasing is read as confirmation of replaceability, not devotion. When you pursue harder, she doesn't think, wow, he really loves me. She thinks, he must really need me. He must not have options. He must know I'm the best he can do. And that perception that you need her more than she needs you is the death of respect, of attraction, of easy relationships. This is why the worst advice you can follow when things get difficult is to try harder, to do more, to give more, to prove yourself more. Every time you chase, you lower your perceived value. Every time you accept bad treatment without consequence, you confirm that you're not that valuable. Every time you negotiate for basic decency, you reveal that you don't have alternatives, and she files that information away, and her behavior adjusts accordingly. Let me give you a different framework. Think of attraction and respect as a thermostat, not a thermometer. A thermometer just measures the temperature. A thermostat controls it. You can't control her internal temperature by measuring it harder. You can't make her more attracted by watching her more closely, analyzing more carefully, trying more intensely. You control the temperature by adjusting the settings, by changing your actual value and the conditions of the relationship. So what are the settings you need to adjust? This brings us to the only sustainable solution: self-development. The only reliable way to improve your relationship outcomes is to become objectively harder to replace, to increase your actual value so that her comparative calculation shifts in your favor. Not tricks, not strategies, not manipulation, actual tangible improvement in who you are and what you offer. When you get in shape, you're harder to replace. When you advance in your career, you're harder to replace. When you build a rich social life, you're harder to replace. When you develop confidence and groundedness, you're harder to replace. When you have purpose and direction, you're harder to replace. These aren't tricks to impress women. They're investments in yourself that change how you're evaluated by everyone, including the woman in your life. And here's the beautiful part. When you genuinely raise your value, you don't have to convince anyone of anything. She can see it. She can feel it. Other women can see it too. And she notices that suddenly you're not just her option. You're an option that other women want. And that changes her behavior immediately. Not because you manipulated her, because reality changed, because the math changed, because her alternatives comparison updated to reflect that keeping you is the smart move. Let me tell you what easy relationships actually look like. They're not conflict-free. Every relationship has friction. They're not effortless in the sense that you both just lie around doing nothing. They're easy in the sense that cooperation is the default. She wants to make you happy because making you happy keeps you around. You want to make her happy because you genuinely enjoy her. Nobody is keeping score. Nobody is withholding. Nobody is constantly testing boundaries. There's flow. There's peace. There's the sense that you're on the same team. Problems get solved because both people want to solve them. Disagreements get resolved because both people would rather have resolution than ongoing conflict. And this isn't because you found a magical unicorn woman. It's because the incentive structure is aligned. She believes she got a good deal. You believe you got a good deal. And when both people believe that, everything becomes simple. Now, I need to address something critical. Selection matters more than repair. Most relationship problems can't be fixed because they stem from poor selection in the first place. You picked someone who doesn't value you. You picked someone who thinks she's settling.
You picked someone whose expectations are wildly misaligned with what you offer, and now you're trying to fix it from the inside. You're trying to convince her that you're valuable. You're trying to negotiate for respect. It doesn't work. Compatibility is discovered early. It's revealed in the first months. It's visible in how easily things flow, how much resistance there is, how naturally she invests. If you're fighting for basic decency from the start, that's not a startup problem that we'll resolve later. That's a selection error. You picked wrong. And the courageous move isn't to fight harder for a losing position. It's to recognize the error and correct it. This is why the work happens before the relationship. The work is getting yourself to a place where you attract women who already recognize your value. The work is developing yourself so that your natural market position is favorable. The work is building a life full enough that you're not desperate, not settling, not accepting crumbs because you're afraid of being alone. When you do that work, selection becomes easy. You naturally end up with someone who treats you well because you don't accept anything less. Easy relationships are earned before they begin. Read that again. The effort happens upstream. It happens in the gym, in the career, in the social life, in the self-development. It happens before you commit, in how you select. It happens in your willingness to walk away from situations that don't serve you. By the time you're in a committed relationship, most of the hard work should be done. The relationship itself should be the reward, not another job. And speaking of jobs, let me give you a filter. If your relationship consistently feels like work, treat it like a job and ask yourself, is the compensation worth the effort? Because a job that extracts more than it gives isn't a good job. You'd quit that job. You'd look for something better. But men stay in relationships that drain them, exhaust them, make them miserable, and they think that's normal. It's not normal. It's not love. It's labor without adequate pay. Now, let me address manipulation. Manipulation tactics, emotional games, persuasion strategies, these are all compensation mechanisms for low leverage. Men who have genuine value don't need to manipulate. They don't need to play push-pull games or strategically withhold attention or engineer emotional reactions. They just exist as valuable men, and women respond to that value naturally. When you find yourself studying manipulation tactics, ask yourself why you need them. The answer is usually because you're trying to extract behavior that wouldn't naturally occur given your actual value. You're trying to trick her into treating you better than your market position warrants. And even if it works temporarily, it doesn't last because you can't sustain a trick forever. Eventually, reality asserts itself. Eventually, she recalibrates to your actual value, and you're back where you started, except now she also resents being manipulated. The alternative is to become someone who doesn't need to manipulate, to become someone whose value is obvious, whose alternatives are visible, whose loss would be genuinely felt. That man doesn't need tactics. That man just needs to show up. His presence is the strategy. His options are the leverage. His willingness to walk away is the negotiating power. Let me talk about social comparison, because this is a hidden killer of modern relationships. She's not just comparing you to the men she knows. She's comparing you to the curated images she sees online, to the lifestyles her friends brag about, to the fantasy relationships portrayed in media. Her expectations are being inflated constantly by external inputs that have nothing to do with reality. And when perception becomes detached from reality, satisfaction becomes almost impossible. She's measuring you against a fictional standard, against highlight reels and fantasies. And you're a real person with real limitations. You're never going to compete with a fantasy. Nobody is. So what do? Two things. First, you can't control her inputs, but you can select for groundedness. Some women are more vulnerable to social comparison distortion than others. The woman who's constantly scrolling Instagram, comparing her life to influencers, measuring her relationship against curated perfection, she's going to be hard to satisfy, not because of you, but because her reference points are broken. Selection matters. Choose women who have realistic expectations. Second, your best defense is genuine value. The more valuable you actually are, the less vulnerable you are to comparison. If you're objectively excellent, fit, successful, interesting, socially connected, then even when she compares, you hold up. You're not threatened by her seeing other options because you know you're competitive. The insecurity only exists when you know deep down that a fair comparison might not go your way. Let me hit on a crucial point. Staying should always be optional. The healthiest relationship dynamic is one where both people feel free to leave, but actively choose not to.
Desire thrives in freedom. It dies in obligation. When someone stays because they have to, because of financial dependence, children, fear of being alone, the energy is completely different than when someone stays because they want to. You should want her to have options. Counterintuitive, I know, but when a woman stays with you despite having alternatives, that's genuine. That's meaningful. That's the foundation of real respect and attraction. When she stays because she's trapped, you might have compliance, but you don't have desire. You have a prisoner, not a partner. And prisoners look for escape. Partners look for ways to build. This is why needy men often try to limit their partner's options. They discourage her friendships, her career, her independence. They want her trapped because they know if she had choices, she might not choose them. And it works in the short term, but it builds resentment, erodes respect, and eventually explodes. The better strategy is to be so valuable that you welcome her options. Let her have friends, let her have career, let her see what else is out there. Because if you've done the work, what she sees out there will confirm what she has. Let me paint you a picture of what this all looks like when it comes together. You've spent years investing in yourself. You're fit, or at least healthy. You have a career with upward trajectory. You have friends and a social life independent of her. You have hobbies and interests that fulfill you. You have confidence that comes from competence, not arrogance. You know what you want and what you won't accept. From this foundation, you select carefully. You don't commit to the first woman who gives you attention. You observe how she treats you when she thinks she might lose you. You watch whether she invests naturally or needs to be chased. You look for signs of genuine appreciation, not just tolerance. And when you find someone who passes these tests, you commit, knowing that you chose from strength, not desperation. Inside the relationship, things flow. When conflicts arise, they get resolved because both of you want resolution. When she's stressed, you support her without abandoning yourself. When you need space, she gives it because she trusts you. There's no constant negotiation over basic respect. There's no walking on eggshells. There's no performance of love to prevent abandonment. There's just ease. This ease isn't because you found a perfect woman. Perfect women don't exist. It's because the structure is right, the value equation is balanced, the incentives are aligned. She knows she got a good deal. You know you got a good deal. And from that mutual recognition, everything else follows. This is what you should be aiming for, not a relationship you survive, a relationship that sustains you. Now, let me tell you what to do if you're currently in a difficult relationship. First, honest assessment. Is this a selection problem or a value problem? Did you choose someone who fundamentally doesn't value you, or have you let yourself decline to the point where her treatment reflects your diminished value? Different problems require different solutions. If it's a selection problem, if she never truly valued you, if she's always treated you like a backup option, if he's never existed, then repair is probably impossible. You're trying to fix a foundation that was cracked from the start. The honest move is to recognize the error and plan your exit. Not angrily, not bitterly, just clearly. This isn't working and won't work, so you need to free yourself to find something that can. If it's a value problem, if things were good once but have declined as you let yourself go, then there's hope, but the work is on you, not on the relationship. You need to rebuild. Get back in the gym, refocus on your career, reconnect with your social circle, develop new interests.
Stop pouring energy into negotiating with her and start pouring it into becoming someone she'd hate to lose. If the value returns, her behavior often follows, not immediately, but over time. And here's a critical point. While you're doing this work, don't announce it.
Don't tell her you're improving to win her back. Don't seek her validation for your progress. Just do it quietly for yourself. Let her notice the change without you pointing it out. Because the moment you make it about winning her approval, you've framed yourself as the one trying to keep her. You've confirmed the power imbalance. The work has to be for you, and the relationship benefits are a side effect. Let me close with the mindset I want you to adopt. Easy relationships are not found, they're built. Not built inside the relationship through negotiation and communication exercises, built beforehand through self-development and careful selection. Built through becoming someone valuable, selecting someone who recognizes that value, and maintaining the conditions where mutual appreciation can thrive. When you do this, relationships stop feeling like jobs. They stop draining you. They start being what they were always meant to be, as a source of joy, support, and connection. Not another item on your to-do list, not another problem to solve. Just good, just easy. Just two people who both know they made the right choice. This is the advice you never got. Not how to communicate better, not how to read her love language, not how to sacrifice more effectively. The advice is become valuable, select wisely, and walk away from anything that requires you to fight for basic decency. Do that, and the relationship problems you've been struggling with will largely cease to exist, not because you solved them, but because you stopped creating the conditions that produced them. Everything I've talked about today, value, selection, incentives, leverage, it all connects. I have more content that goes deeper into each piece, building abundance, distancing strategies, how to walk away when you need to. Check the description if you want to continue this journey. For now, I want to hear from you. Have you experienced the difference between a relationship that felt like work and one that felt like ease? What was different? What changed? Drop your experiences in the comments. Not to brag, not to complain, but to help other men see what's possible when the structure is right. That's it. Stop fighting for crumbs. Start building a life where crumbs aren't all you get, and watch how everything changes. So what are your thoughts on today's topic? Make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel Psychological Depth so you won't miss any of our upcoming posts. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.